What is up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Level Up Your Mental. My name is Ariel, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And today I wanted to talk about balance and what does that mean, why it's important, and how you can achieve this in your life. I know for a lot of people, we tend to have a lot of struggles when it comes to showing up in all the aspects and all the places that we need to in our life and all the things that we're responsible for. And at the end of the day, it's about finding a balance to be able to show up in those places, but also being able to show up for yourself. There have been plenty of times where I have seen people, whether it's in my career, whether it's in my work, whether it's in family and friends, where they are running themselves crazy to be able to do everything, and then they're not taking care of themselves, and it gets to the point where you either have a mental breakdown or you just get so overwhelmed that you're neglecting yourself. And essentially, I want people to understand that within all the things that we have to show up in life for, we also have to understand how we can enjoy life for what it is and the things that we can do. There are going to be some moments in your life where you are going to struggle, in the sense of you're going to have to grind and get to the places that you want to be, and essentially put a lot of work into a lot of things. But at the end of the day, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to be able to get to that point where you essentially do find that balance. Of course, it's hard in the beginning because you can't really see that light, but at the end of the day, it's there. And a lot of times I try to tell people, think about all the other times in your life where you struggled and you didn't think that you were going to make it out, and essentially you're here now, you were able to get through it. But sometimes it can just be very hard to be able to see that when you're in it, and I completely understand that. I just think that if you are tired and you're overwhelmed and there's so many things that you have to do and so many things that you have to show up for, you also want to make sure that you are essentially showing up for yourself and doing what you need to do, because at the end of the day, if you don't do that, you're going to run yourself crazy, and it's not going to be the best result for you, and you're going to end up being in a situation where you essentially have to choose. And I mean, there might be some points in life where you have to do that, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, and you have to essentially just find a balance through all of the craziness that we have to do and all the things that we have to show up for as adults. So ideally, to maintain balance, right, we have to learn how to mix work and play. And when I say play, it essentially means stuff that we are enjoying doing, whether that's socializing with others, spending time by ourselves, diving more into our hobbies, educating ourselves, anything that you find enjoyable, and stuff that essentially you are not having to do based off of stuff that are required for you as an adult, as a person, or just in general when it comes to the certain aspects in your life, right? Because essentially, in order for us to maintain balance, we have to learn how to mix the things that we have to do and the things that we want to do, of the things that drain us and the things that feed us, right? Work can essentially drain you to the point where you don't have much motivation and much energy to do stuff, right? It's normal. And no matter what job you're doing, you could be physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. And you have to feed back into yourself by doing the things that you enjoy. And that doesn't necessarily mean carving out a specific time every week. I mean, if you can, you definitely can, but I know for some people it's definitely hard. But essentially, you want to make sure that you're carving out time for the things that you enjoy, whether that's something that you do a couple times a week or something that you look forward to on the weekends. But having some time to do the things that we want to do, because essentially all the things that we are required to do as adults, even though we try to find the joy in the work that we do and everything that we do, we essentially want to do things that we want to do. And unfortunately, as adults, we have to learn how to manage that with being responsible. I mean, we all know what happens if you're not a responsible adult, right? And you're not doing the things that you need to do, and you don't have things to fall back on. It can be very hard and it can be challenging for some people. But at the end of the day, you have to learn how to balance these things and accept life for what it is and try to make the best of it, right? Because this is what we are dealt with. These are the things that we are given, and we have to just learn how to adjust it and make a balance and try to figure out what's going to work for us at the end of the day, right? So essentially, the importance when it comes to balance is it prevents stress, right? We all know that when it comes to stress, that can show up physically. You can be stressed out, and not only are you dealing with a lot of maybe anxiety, you're dealing with a lot of different things, but that also comes with a lot of physical symptoms. If you are stressed out, you will sometimes, people will get a lot of headaches, you'll get stomach pain, just a lot of things that will show up physically for some people that I don't think they understand how that can cause a lot for you. There are some times where people will go to the doctor and they're dealing with pain in specific areas or dealing with a lot of stuff going on with them, and they can never figure out what the issue is. And then, you finally get down to it and you realize that the person has been stressing out about something for a while now, can't really find a solution for it. And so they just hold on to that stress. And sometimes we add more stress onto ourselves. So with that being said, right, finding balance requires motivation and work, but your overall well-being is worth it. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of motivation to find a specific balance in your life. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. You want to be able to enjoy this thing called life. Yes, I know it sucks. I know there's a lot of ups and downs in life. I know there's a lot of things that we are required to do. I know there are things in life in certain time periods that you don't want to do, but you have to because that's just the way that things are. At the end of the day, we're here. There are certain things in our life that we do enjoy, and we just have to learn how to make the time for it. And sitting around complaining and just saying that things suck and it's miserable never helps anybody. And you just have to learn how to manage it and how to deal with it, essentially, until you're able to get to the point where it's a little better situation for yourself, right? So sometimes maintaining balance can be messy. Even when we find our overall balance in our life, there's going to be times when we are overloaded. And I said this before, right? There's going to be times where we realize we need to slow down, and times when we can't slow down right away. And that's something really important to remind yourself, right? There are going to be moments in your life where you are going to be overloaded and there's going to be a lot going on. And I say this in the sense of, in the beginning stages of being a parent, you don't have much of a choice when you have a newborn. If you essentially don't have the best support system, you are essentially doing those things on your own, whether you are a single person, whether you are a couple, a married couple, whatever. That's a lot of work, especially coming from a life where it was just the two of you, and now you're adding another person, and now you have to figure out the needs and the wants and taking care of. That's a lot of work, and essentially that doesn't go away, right? Once you become a parent, you're a parent until they're an adult, but essentially it changes as their ages change, right? They're more needy as they're younger, but when they start to become independent and they start to do things on their own, they're only going to need you for a certain time period, and then you can shift things, right? So this is what I mean when I say that there's going to be a certain time period where things are going to be hard and you're going to struggle, but then things are going to gradually get a little bit better and you're going to find that balance. At the end of the day, it's learning how to motivate and push yourself and work through all those things so you can essentially get to that point, right? Because you also have to recognize when you're getting out of balance too. So if you finally figure out something that's working, but then you're slowly now shifting and putting more work into something else, you have to be able to recognize that and get yourself back on course, right? Because maintaining a balance isn't about staying perfect. It's about figuring out what works for you when that starts to shift, recognizing that and figuring out how to get back to that point, right? And so keeping your balance isn't a one-time thing, but it's a consistent effort. It's about putting in the work, getting those results, and finally seeing it and keeping that momentum. And yes, life is always going to throw you curveballs. Life is always going to throw you different things and different challenges that you have to deal with, but you also have to remember at the end of the day, you are essentially going to find that balance in your life, and you will be able to deal with those things when they come. And it's not like there hasn't been different moments in your life where you've had challenges and you've overcome them and you're still here. So that's something very important for people to remember. There's definitely going to be ups and downs, but it's not something that can't happen at the end of the day. Along with maintaining a balance, a lot of times where I will hear from people and why they can't maintain a balance is, some people it can be a struggle, but at the end of the day, there are some people who there's a lot of excuses, right? A lot of the excuses will be, I'm too busy. There's never enough time to do everything, But at the end of the day, what you do with your time is important and is something that you are in control of. Yes, of course, there's certain aspects in your life where you don't have control over certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't figure out how to deal with it, right? So I know for myself, when I first started out in my career and I was going to school and I was having to do internship hours while also working while going to school, everybody knows that that's a lot to juggle, right? You don't really have much of a time to hang out with family, hang out with friends. It's not saying you can't, it's just saying that the time that you had before is not as much as you have now. And now that's about creating a balance between, okay, these are the days that I can work, these are the days that I can put in as far as creating a schedule for yourself. Like, when can I put more work into my studies, and then also being able to, okay, I have time this weekend I can spend with family, and essentially communicating too with families and friends. Like, right now it's a hectic time in my life, I'm not as available, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't hang out. We just have to plan it and schedule it right now in my life. But essentially I will get to that point where it gets a little bit better, or realistically everybody wants to get to that point. We don't know when it's going to happen, but I think if you keep working towards it, you're going to eventually get there. So of course there's going to be times when you struggle, but you can't keep saying, I'm too busy, there's never enough time, and you're also struggling. For some people it might be hard for them to see that it's a possibility, but you never know until you try. And you have to essentially do what's best for you so that you can show up for others and show up in the way that you want to, right? It's ultimately up to you how you want to spend your time, right? Saying that I don't have time for something is basically saying that that's not a priority for me. There are certain things that we know that we don't have the priority for right now. Like, you might be going through a specific time period in your job where you're having to do a lot of work and make a lot of ends meet, and essentially you can't do your hobbies as much as you could before. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it ever. It just means that it's going to be lowered. And if it's something that you really, really want to do, you will make it happen. I always tell people, if you want to do something, you are going to make it happen. That's in all aspects of life. Yes, there are things in our lives that we don't want to do, but essentially we have to, like work and going to school. But at the end of the day, if we know that the only way that we're going to be able to, if I go back to as far as the schooling, the only way that we're going to be able to get our parents off our back, or if we're going to be able to get the best job, we know that we have to go through all these trainings, we have to go through school in order to get to that point. And it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be a certain time period in your life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how your life is going to be forever. And we also have to look at the little steps in life and not the whole big picture. For some people it's very hard to look at the whole picture because it could be overwhelming, but you have to know that all these little steps that you're making will eventually get you to the big step as far as where you want to be in life. And sometimes looking at it by piece tends to help, and that's where the balance comes in. It's just figuring out what to do with your life in that time period and what you can do to essentially make it work for you. Now, with that being said, there are resources out there that can definitely help you, and that essentially comes with being able to seek the help when you feel like you need it. There are some people that don't feel like they need the help and they can figure it out on their own. But I think it's very important to highlight, with me being a therapist, to let people know that yes, therapy can help you in the sense of you are so disorganized in your life and you're trying to find a balance and you don't know where to start. So therapists can help you figure that out, right? Therapists can help people figure out what elements of their life are not in a proportion that feels good to them, and develop a strategy to realign time and commitment. So basically helping you recognize where you're out of proportion, where you're putting in all your efforts, and where you can kind of divvy them up and figure out which spaces are going to be able to work for you, and create a schedule, a strategy, something to be able to help you in that time moment. So when you do get, out of it, you're able to at least get through it, and then essentially you'll get to the point of where you want to be, right? So people can fall out of balance when they work too hard and have less time for family and friends, but at the same time, a toxic relationship might demand more time and attention and make someone might feel out of balance and unable to devote their time to career and hobbies. So, it's all about where your time is going. And the emphasis as far as when it comes to toxic relationships, that can take a lot of people's time. Now, that's not healthy at the end of the day, but it is something that at the end of the day does happen. Some people, they fall in love quickly, they end up meeting people, and it can be very hard for them to be able to divvy up their time between what they need. And so I think it's just important to remember that you can fall out of balance. You can overwork yourself and have less time for family and friends, but at the end of the day, it's about finding a balance between the two so you're able to show up in all these areas, right? And so sometimes what needs fixing is complex, or, better said, what needs fixing is something that needs healing, right? We have to understand that there are going to be time periods in our life where we need help. There are going to be time periods in our life where we can't do things on our own and we're going to need support. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to need a therapist, but you could need the support of your church. You can be the support of your neighborhood, your family, your friends, your school, wherever you get support from. But use the resources that you have to be able to get yourself to a point where you can find a balance in your life and be able to deal with the things that you're dealing with more easily than having to struggle with it on your own. Of course, there may be some points where it's very hard and you don't think that you're going to be able to find a balance or that there's any help out there. But I can assure you, if you just take the time to be able to figure it out, you can figure out a system that's going to work for you. And essentially, it has to be something that works for you, because this is your life at the end of the day and you want to learn how to balance it and to be able to show up for all the things that you want to do. And that doesn't necessarily mean just work and school. This is all areas between work, school, hobby, family, friends, everything, right? We want to make sure that we have a balance with all these things, right? And so you want to make sure that you learn to set your priorities, learn to say no, and setting boundaries, right? Plan ahead and reflect. If you know that you have work obligations or things that you want to do the next day, you don't want to go out that night and not be able to show up as your best self the following day, right? It's about priorities. And like I said, there's going to be time periods in your life where you're going to have to make sacrifices in certain areas. And that's not selfish. It's just that's the certain moment in your life where you are putting a lot of work towards something because there's a goal at the end of the day and there's going to be a reward for it and you're going to be able to manage everything. But you have to understand that there's going to be sacrifice in other areas, and that's okay. It's about communicating with others and letting them know what's going on in our life so that they're aware. And then also for ourselves, understanding that it's okay at this point in my life. It's not terrible, but I do need to sacrifice some things so I can show up in the areas that I want to show up and be my best self, right? So making sure that we're understanding what a balance is for us, why it's important, and what we can get out of it at the end of the day. It's okay to feel overwhelmed and stressed, but you don't want to stay like that forever, right? You don't want to deal with those health issues. You don't want to deal with all of that comes with it at the end of the day. You want to make sure that you are showing up for yourself first and then being able to put everything else into everybody. And that comes with setting up a balance for yourself, right? Putting in the work, putting in the motivation and showing up for yourself and knowing that there's going to be a balance at the end of the day. Because even for myself, it took a while for me to get to a point now in my life where I feel like I have some type of balance, where I feel like I can actually enjoy the work that I do when it comes to my job, enjoy time with family and friends, and then also be able to do the things that I like. Of course, that wasn't the case when I was first starting out in school, and again, having to do work, internship, going to school, devoting all the time for that. Even after school was done and doing my hours for my license and taking the test, all that stuff is a lot. And it was a stressful time period in my life. But I knew at the end of the day that I was going to get to a point where I am now, where I'm essentially happy with what I have, and I can find a balance in my life where I'm able to work and reap all the benefits of all the hard work that I put in, all these years. So don't be so hard on yourself when you're struggling. Those are the moments that are going to make you stronger. And at the end of the day, making sure that you are looking out for yourself and showing up for yourself as number one, and making sure that you are doing what's best for you. And it's going to be hard and you're going to struggle. And again, there might be some moments where the balance might be messy and you are going to be overloaded at times, and you're going to realize that you have to slow down, and there's going to be times where you can't slow down. But essentially, it's doing the best with what you have and just trying to figure out how to make it work until you can get to that point where you can reap all the benefits and be able to have that balance in your life and appreciate all the things that you have worked for and just enjoy everything that you have. Because not everything in life is promised, but we know that we have to enjoy the things that we have and also make those memories, because there is nothing that you can take back with you, but memories. And you want to make sure that you are creating those memories with the people that you love and the things that you love doing. And yes, of course, we have to show up, like I said, for work and all the things that we're responsible for, but we want to make time for the things that we enjoy. And that comes with essentially creating a balance, right? So I want to thank you guys for coming to another episode. I'm hoping that this episode was very informational for you guys. Please join in on the conversation. Let me know if there's any topics that you'd like me to talk about. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.